past 30 years of Chinese development and you look at the current Chinese economy in comparison to where it was before foreign capital started flooding in, and before they started taking advantage of their manufacturing power and also, ripping the IP as aggressively as they could, perfectly openly, by the way. And our capital owners also, like the business owners here, know that, right? It's not a secret, but they still want the cheap manufacturing. So they just were like, yeah, whatever. Who
Sorry
cares?
about that sound, guys.
But I think their development has been pretty solid as a consequence of that. It's about how evenly you distribute the resources once you start getting in a shitload of foreign capital.
Do you trust their numbers though? Because I've heard quite a bit that they could manufacture their own profits, and a lot of the buildings they've built are built on, invisible money that was just basically taken from the people who invest, and builders use it and then plow it into the next development. And
I mean, I see it. I look at their railroads. I look at high-speed rail. Like if you pull up a map of like high-speed rail in China from 2000 to now, in comparison to, high-speed rail in America, which is non-existent, I think that that's like pretty even development in a country. We were looking at like ghost cities yesterday. Yeah. Because people immediately are like, well, what about the ghost cities? Yeah. I think that was a combination of like make work, which I do think is something that every good government should do. Make work, like busy work. Construction being one of those ways of doing that, and thinking that the population was going to grow more than it actually.
Chatterino was like breaking, so I was like trying to make it work again. I was just restarting it. Sorry about that. Really quick. Okay, last thing, because I see some people that are confused. Okay, just really quickly. I'm just going to say this one last time because there was a lot of confusion. Because I jumped from point to point, and I understand why people got confused. Last thing on this. All I said was that, because this guy said 50 to 70K is like keeping you under their thumb. And I said 70K, this is a sentence. You guys ready? At 70K, if you lived in a rural area making 70K, you could easily buy a house within a couple years. Because the cost of living in rural areas is so much smaller than the cost of living in major cities. That's all I said. Okay? That's it. That was it. The problem is most rural areas won't pay you 70K. Yeah, that's why I said in the context of this interview where the guy said 70K is enough for an employer to keep you under their thumb, I said that is only true in major cities. Okay? Excuse me, burp. And yes, obviously, there are some cities that you can do that in and some cities that you can't do that in. There are a lot of cities in the United States. What the fuck are you going to do with a house like that? Be sad. That's it. That's all I said. I don't think it was that complicated, but got lost in the sauce. Anyways. Okay, we're going to go back. Socialism is when no house. Capitalism is also when no house. How the fuck are you supposed to get a house? Yeah. Yeah. True. I think people were confused whether you meant a mortgage or buying it all at once. Who is buying houses with cash? Like, who is buying houses all at once? Who is doing that? Are there people, I guess really rich people do that. And obviously, I would never be talking about people that are very rich doing that. What? Or like, sorry, I got lost again in the sauce. I'm obviously talking about a mortgage, okay? I'm obviously talking about a mortgage. Okay. All right. Is it even smart to do that? Depends on where you live. Depends on the housing market. Depends on the interest rates. In some instances, it does make sense. In most instances, it doesn't make sense. But yeah. Okay, going back to the video. Hasan himself said he didn't even buy his house cash. Yeah. Most of the time you want a mortgage anyways. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm pressing play now. Are we good? It was a very cold take. It was not a hot take at all.
Actually did. Mm-hmm. And, this happens in not only centrally planned economies, but it happens in America as well. Not to the same degree, but a lot of those ghost cities are now actually becoming more and more populated because there is need for a developed city. Like people want to move to a place where, if they move certain things around, and that is an advantage that centrally planned economies have. If you move certain things around, you can move people there as well. People want to go to a place where they can get better educational opportunities, for example. So that's what they do. They'll be like, all right, we're going to put some really good schools here. So then people start moving into what was before a ghost city. So I think that there's a lot of confusion and a lot of chaos about.
Yeah, isn't this like a big thing that like people think that China is bad because they have ghost cities? But realistically speaking, ghost cities are like relatively normal in the development of like new cities or new areas where you want people to start moving to. Like you build everything that needs to be built, and then you encourage businesses to come and put up shop in your town. And then now there is a workforce there. There are stores there. There's shops there. There's things that people can do there. And that's it. You know what I mean? Smiley, Texas is a ghost town or ghost city. Yeah. It's definitely not like the natural way that cities generally have been made or like brought up or whatever, but it doesn't mean that it can't work.
What gets talked about with respect to China, there are obviously awful things that the Chinese government has done, just like any other government has, make no mistake.
Isn't it sad that if you want to talk about China in a positive way, you have to say there are bad things that China has done? Like the internet is so brain rotted that you aren't allowed to say anything good about any country ever. Like the Russia stuff. Russia is such a good example of this. I've had conversations or like even stream topics before where I say like, dude, Russia's education system was really good. They did a really good job in prioritizing education because education is like a good, strong education system is like the backbone of any country. And I was talking about this on stream in relation to the USSR and how they really pushed education. And then it's like 20 people are like, don't you know they're literally invading Ukraine? It's like, do you think I live under a rock? Yes, I know that they're invading Ukraine. Well, isn't that bad? It's like, did you need me to tell you that I think a country invading another country is bad? What world do you think I live in that I think that that's not bad? Yes, it's bad. Yes, war is bad. Invading another country because you want territory is bad. All of those things are bad, okay? I can't talk about the education in the Soviet Union in a positive way without initially saying, by the way, Russia is bad. Like, what the fuck, I stopped shit talking China once I realized all my negative talking points came from the U.S. government, same government. Well, I do think that there are negative things about China. You can't deny the fact that like China does have a very authoritarian government. That's just reality. You can't deny a lot of the things that have occurred in China over the past like 2 decades. Okay, you can't call the guy like Winnie the Pooh, or they'll send you to like basically a re-education camp. Like very famous people who are from China have been sent to re-education camps after criticizing like the top G. And then they're like, I'm sorry for everything that I said. I take it all back. I was completely wrong. I actually love our president so much. I love him so much. He is welcome in our home at any time.
Your silence and bad thing that you have talked about before is telling.
Like, they have a lot of human rights violations. You know what I mean? But why do I have to bring that up every time I just want to say something good? about a country that has bad things. You know, it's so stupid. Can you imagine if every time you said something good about America, you had to say a million bad things first? So dumb. Israel is very good at water reclamation and water efficiency, among other things. It doesn't mean what's happening in Gaza isn't bad. Yeah. You know? It's just stupid. It's just dumb. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Is that a telltale sign of a toxic relationship? Americans can't handle other countries doing things well. I don't think it's an American thing. I think it's like a online politics brain rot thing. Saying bad things about America comes naturally. Honestly, I struggle to find good things about America. Oh, hi, Doodle Burb. I just say I enjoy that people terms and conditions may apply. People don't give a fuck what you do in the US, which is pretty nice. I've heard that from friends who live in other countries, other societies and stuff, there is a status quo. Again, terms and conditions may apply if you live in a small city, in a small rural area, or like a suburb. It does matter, especially if you're queer. But I do like that if you're in basically any major city, nobody really gives a fuck. Except for 1% of weirdos, right? Which is nice. And then everything else about the US is just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. For example, we have a healthcare system that can cure people of diseases, of illnesses that other countries don't have the ability to do that. For anyone here who has lived in a developing nation or has visited family or friends in developing nations, they literally don't have healthcare systems that they trust. Visiting family, extended family in North Africa, everyone who is able to do so just goes to Europe for medical treatment. Because they're it's a 50-50. If you go to a doctor here, they might just give you some placebo and be like, we can't help you, and then send you on your way. Or they just give you some ibuprofen and they're like, good luck. And so everyone there who has the means to do so goes to Belgium or France or whatever, some other countries, and they're like, hey, I need surgery for this tumor, or I need surgery for this or whatever, right? The fact that you can go to a hospital in the US, get diagnosed, and get treated for whatever you have is pretty amazing. And then we fucking paywall it. We have one of the most amazing healthcare systems. And then you're like, yeah, but only if you're willing to become $1 million in debt, we will cure your cancer. What the fuck, dude? Are you fucking kidding me? Or another good example, we have really, really, really good tech infrastructure because we've devoted money into tech infrastructure. Even if you are the craziest Bible Belt motherfucker, the U.S. is committed to getting you mail. The U.S. is committed to getting you internet and cable. The U.S. is committed to putting you on the grid. And then we don't regulate anything that's on there. So people get on and they read the most nonsensical garbage about how essential oils will cure your autism. Okay. Wait. All right. We're talking about something. Hold up.
Shamrock 100, Shamrock 100, Shamrock 100, Trump, China.
All right. I'm scolding the 3 contrarians in chat that had something to say about what I said that was very good. Okay? Now, you can go back. I was very careful this time, okay? Because I'm going to call you fuckers out right now, and it's going to be so clean. It's going to be so clean, okay? I said the U.S. is committed to getting you cable, to getting you mail, and to getting you internet. Okay. And I was specifically talking about the infrastructure bill and how the infrastructure bill was dedicating $70 billion to getting everyone internet, relatively fast internet. Okay. And here it is. I actually know what I'm talking about on this one, all right? And it didn't work. Yeah, I didn't say that there is currently internet. I said they're committed to trying to get you internet. Okay? Something that other countries haven't necessarily done. Bipartisan infrastructure deal allocates $65 billion to expand broadband in communities across the U.S., create more low-cost broadband service options, subsidize the cost of service for low-income households, and provide funding to address the digital equity and inclusion needs in our communities. A lot of fucking countries haven't taken this step. A lot of countries haven't even addressed the fact that internet at this point is something that is very important. Okay? A lot of countries don't give a fuck about it. The fact that the US at all is just like, yeah, internet is important and we're going to try and get everyone internet. That's good, actually. That's good. It's probably a need at this point. Oh, yeah. No, I think you absolutely need it. I think you absolutely need it. It's 100% a utility. I think it's as important as I think it's almost as important as running water and internet electricity. In half the countries in Europe, it's a human right, though. I mean, I believe it. It's an important utility. Okay. That's all I said. Okay. And 3 people in chat had the audacity to say not internet. Okay. And to the 3 people who said that, you are getting timed out for a week. Think about why you've been timed out. Think about the fact that I made a sentence that made perfect sense and you still felt the need to be contrarian and be like, no, not internet. Okay? Think about your actions when you're in the hidey hole. All right, motherfucker? All right. That's what I will say. We're doing something about this.
Avoiding those realities. But I think overall, they have developed incredibly well, especially if you look to where they were 20, 30 years ago or where they were 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's insane. And, this is not just my analysis of the situation. If you look to the World Trade Organization, whenever someone says capitalism has been profoundly good in eviscerating global poverty, extreme poverty at the global level, they're pretty much just talking about China. The Chinese numbers really, really skyrocket that performance. If you leave China out of the equation, and obviously I'm not the World Trade Organization and I have, or these institutions have a profoundly different worldview than I do, right? But even they recognize that. They just say it's because of capitalism. I say it's because of resource allocation, a more equitable distribution of resources.
My biggest issue is that we have no way of verifying what China says is true. And that's my biggest concern.
Have you ever been to China?
Never.
I haven't either. I really want to go. I just look to tier 1 cities.
Sure.
And think that Shenzhen, as far as I've seen from people that have traveled, as far as
Hasan is going to have to deal with people saying that he thinks that China is good. If he visits China, it's all over.
I read on the matter from, again, Western outlets ultimately, right? Which usually will have a bias that is, I would say, anti-China because they see it as in contention to American, American power, Western power, right? Even they recognize the development. So, I feel like it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Let's get back onto that after we finish the story, because we left off with you being 18 or so in college. You ended up transferring to Rutgers. What happened there? And then how did you get to where you are today from that?
I graduated from college, can't get a job. obviously. I graduated with honors, actually. Poli-sci degree.
What was that?
What changed between Miami and Rutgers?
I just realized like I have to, I have to work hard
together.
I had to get my shit together.
Yeah, okay.
Was there a pivotal moment that happened for you that was like your wake-up call, or was it just gradual over time?
No, it was just gradual.
Okay.
Because like I think American school is like fairly easy in comparison to what I had to learn in school in Turkey. So I was just like really phoning it in. So I decided not to phone it as much. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's pretty much it. And when you're a freshman, you don't really know what you're going to do. So you have to take a lot of like, Common Core style classes. And those foundational classes are often like very difficult, especially if it's not something that you're truly interested in. Whereas poli-sci was something I was interested in. So it was a lot easier for me.
Yeah.
Like it came naturally.
What was the job you wanted to get? So you must have graduated, 2014 or 15?
2013.
2013.
The job I wanted to get originally was, this is funny, a consultant in one of the big 4 firms.
Really?
So originally,
I remember the days of thinking I would get into the big 4. Omegalol.
Originally, I was like, I have a poli-sci background. I could probably go to like, PwC, McKinsey, one of those companies. You know what I mean? That's what I was like trying to get hired by. But of course, that's all like wheeling and dealing,
Sure.
who you know. And I did not know anybody. So they just, I don't even think anyone even looked at my resume, right?
Could it be GPA too? Do you have a good grade?
I did,
okay.
Like I said, I graduated with honors,
Sure.
3.75.
Got it, okay.
So, that's like pretty solid, I would say. And my dad was like, you have to go to like law school or get an MBA or something, right? And I was not really necessarily interested in that. So I was just like, yeah, sure. I'll study for law. I'll study for my LSATs in California, Los Angeles. At the time, you guys probably know this, but if you don't, my uncle has a YouTube channel called The Young Turks. It was like a 26-person shop. It was like a tiny operation, not that big, not that media behemoth or anything.
21 months.
So I was like, yeah, I'll just go work
decks.
with him, do an internship with him, and I'll live in LA and I'll study for the LSATs. I had no interest in studying for the LSATs or going to fucking law school. So yeah.
Law school is fucking killer. Moink, thank you for the 21 months. Law school is, go there if you don't like yourself, okay? If you hate yourself, go there.
Yeah, I started working there, and then I was like, yeah, maybe I should just like work with him instead. And at first it was really awful because I had no money and the Young Turks didn't have any money either. So they were like, yeah, we want to do biz dev. We want you to fill the role of someone who would be doing like our direct advertisement sales in-house rather than someone who rather than having Google do it, right? Like bringing in sponsorships every now and then rather than, relying on YouTube. We want someone to do it internally. So I basically set up our in-house advertisement sales and operations. A lot of cold calling, a lot of learning. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew the industry a little bit, but that's how I got my start at the Young Turks.
Was it like commission based or was it salary?
It was supposed to be like commission based, but when you put a 22-year-old in a job like that, in a position like that, and it's commission based, and the product that you're like trying to sell is kind of hard to sell because it's like political commentary, political news, and you're going for a lot of like DR campaigns, right? Or where with
That's what you're trying to sell to?
Well, I had to get like, I brought in like Squarespace, Crunchyroll, things like
sure.
that.
Yeah.
And through like, they weren't necessarily tier 1, ad companies, I would say. They weren't like tier 1 marketing companies. Like I would meet up with.
It always boggles my mind talking to other streamers who have like a million different sponsors. I know so many content creators who like every month they've got like 3 different sponsors lined up, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be working with like Riot this week. I'm going to work with this game this week. I'm going to work with like this Doritos. I'm working with this. I'm like, what? And like, I just I'm never gonna get a sponsor. I feel like on my channel. I feel like I just don't get them because of the fucking politics, dude. I saw people taking pics with like Chipotle bowls. Dude, like, can I please? Do agents help with those? I had an agent for 6 months and they didn't bring me a single brand deal, so I'm just gonna guess no. Maybe with a different agent. Maybe. Oh.
With them, like OMD, all these like big brands, you know, I think it was Ogilvy was another one. I can't even remember now, but you know, I was cold calling a lot. I was developing relationships with these people while also simultaneously on the back end, like trying to create a system, like trying to create the structure so we can like actually deliver these ads.
A system? Interesting. He wasn't interested in Trainwreck's systems, but now he's suddenly interested. Interesting.
All this stuff. And I brought in a bunch of campaigns, but they were all like, you know, CTR based. Like that was the performance that they wanted. And it's just like the shittiest type of ads. I'm sure you guys have them too, still to this day. I wanted to do like native advertising. I thought that would be cool, but at the time, you know, people weren't really willing to take a bet. I think we were too ahead of the game in that respect. And I brought that stuff in, but it was so awful. I mean, I fucking hated sales.
What did you not like about it?
It sucks, man. Come on. I'm sure you guys have done sales in some capacity.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I fucking hated it. It was just like, I don't want to be friends.
What type of freak do you have to be to like sales? That guy is either Mormon or he's an alien.
With these fucking people, you know what I mean? I feel like you have to be a sociopath a little bit to be like really good at it.
No. He was an agent.
I loved it. I was a
years.
real estate agent for 10 years, so that's how I got started in sales. Before that, though, it wasn't really sales, but kind of. I worked at a marine aquarium wholesaler, so we would sell fish and coral. And it wasn't really like a sales. I didn't have to pitch anybody, but someone would call in and ask about something, and I would describe it to them over the phone. Like I didn't get commissions or anything.
I was getting no inbound requests. I was all out.
That's gonna make it obviously less fun.
I was doing the same thing. I was calling up people from open houses who would sign in and talk to them. But I felt like sales provides a service where if they're looking for something, if you could help them find that something, you're doing them a service. So it's very much a customer service based industry.
Okay. Real estate is like 50% sales. But like the thing with real estate is you're selling people something they already know. You know what I mean? And usually the people that end up taking you up on your offer to like sell their house or to buy a house, they already kind of want to do that anyways. Real sales, like door-to-door sales, that shit, because you have to convince someone that they want it. You don't have to convince anyone to sell their house. People either want to sell their house or they don't.
One other thing I did while all of that was going on was I always wanted to be on camera, but I was dog shit. Like I was so bad at it, right? I was not good. Yeah. I don't think anyone is really that good. I love talking, but I was very nervous on camera at first. Like when the camera light was on, I was a different person almost. I couldn't let my personality out. But at that point, I'd realized that like repetition and hard work for someone like myself, I was able to achieve a lot of the things as long as I just like fucking boulder through it, you know, push through it. Doesn't matter if I suck at first. Who gives a shit? It's embarrassing, but it doesn't matter. So I would present myself as a fill-in host because I looked at all these other hosts and it's a YouTube show. You know, these guys don't know anything more than I do. They're just, you know, they're a little bit more charismatic. Sure, they have more experience on camera. But I don't think they're bringing anything particularly new to the table. It's a fucking YouTube show, you know? And I was like, I could do that. I want to do that. So I would say, if someone needs a fill, I'll do it. Last second, doesn't matter. Don't care what the subject matter is. I'll read on it. I'll speak on it. I'll do it. So that's why I started doing, more on-camera appearances at first.
Was that like a teleprompter, or would they give you a topic and you'd have to research that and speak on it?
Yeah. No teleprompter at this point.
Okay.
And then I was living with one of the producers at the time for one of the media properties there on the entertainment side. And I pitched him the idea. The Young Turks at this point had no teleprompter shows. I pitched him the idea of doing a teleprompter show. They had a studio that was basically just like a supply closet. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm gonna put a fucking green screen in here and I'm gonna do a show out of this. I'm gonna give you like a free show. I'm just doing extra work, right? And it took a lot of convincing, but ultimately he was like, sure, whatever. I mean, we lived together. It's I'm greasing his wheels that way, I guess. I'm gonna call it the breakdown. And everyone was like, oh,
he was greasing his wheels, huh? Huh?
Oh, we're just gonna be a drain on our resources. 30 million fucking views every week. It was
30
Facebook.
million views a week.
Oh, yeah.
Was that monetized? It was monetized at that point, was it?
No.
Oh, so this is, but it's so much reach for you guys.
Yes.
Wow.
So, it became this thing that was insanely popular. Facebook was skyrocketing. Like our Facebook growth was insane, tremendous.
Who was the audience at that point?
Who the audience was, I don't really know what the demographics were, but I would say they're still 18 to 35,
Okay.
Like the key target demo. I probably was a little bit younger. Like Facebook at that point was like more popular, I would say, than it is now with younger demographics. This is when people were like moving away. They had Snapchat as an alternative, but like there wasn't that many viable alternatives, right? And it was just doing tremendously well. I was doing these things where I would just do like a back and forth with Tommy Lauren. Do you guys remember who that is? She was
do
a
back and forth with her?
So we never collaborated, but she would make a video and I would piece by piece go through her video and just like dunk on everything she was saying. It was, I think like this wasn't as popular as it is now. Everyone does it now, right? Everyone does it on TikTok, everyone does it on YouTube, but at the time it was like kind of unique, especially to the political sphere. And it was still scripted, it was still teleprompted, and I had like all these assets that I would bring in. And it was really, it was, for a brief moment, I think I captured the attention of like a massive group of people. But it was still under the TYT umbrella. I did not have any ownership of this IP. I did not have anything. I have no control over it, you know what I mean? And I would constantly...
Back during the exploitation days, yeah. The woke Bay era.
They say, give me more funds so I can hire a writer. Give me more funds so I can like beef up this process. And instead of doing that, what did TYT do? They said, no, we're just going to take the breakdown, your baby, your child, this thing that you've made, and we're going to make all the other hosts do it as well, which will dilute the brand and what my vision for it was. So now you have to train everyone, just like you've trained your editors, to be able to do this kind of content. And you have to also help them, make the show. Because my job isn't making a show. My job at that point is building our Facebook operations, right? Like growing our Facebook operations. I hated that. That was when I realized like fully that I just have no control over my life whatsoever. This is a reality that many people face and unfortunately can't really escape because, they can't become entrepreneurs because that is a, massive, massive risk. It was one that I was able to do. Eventually, by January 2020, before that, I went part-time with the Young Turks because I wanted my own thing. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. I'm jumping. What ended up happening is I realized I needed my own thing after that, when they did that. I needed to no longer be in the shadow of the Young Turks, no longer be in the shadow of my uncle, because no matter what I did, everyone was like, nepotism. That's the reason why you're successful, nepotism. That's the reason why your Facebook, shit's popping off, nepotism. It's like, well, he's not doing fucking Facebook videos. Like, what do you mean? He literally can't. Like, So I was always like trying to move the audience from TYT Properties to some.
It's so fucked too, because like the perspective of people who think that it's all nepotism. I mean, those people are obviously wrong, but I also get where they're coming from or whatever, right? Like, I think his time at the Young Turks legitimized a lot of what he does, right? Because the Young Turks feels like a legitimate news organization, right? And his working there, like him having worked there for a few years, I think legitimized him as like a political pundit, right? But I don't think that necessarily takes away all the hard work that you put in, regardless if someone else is doing that for you or whatever, right? It gave him a head start, like cred and access to equipment, yeah. So yeah.
Something that I own, like, you know, my Instagram.
Yeah.
They were not too fond of that. At first, they didn't give a shit, but then they realized, like, oh, fuck, this guy's, like, kind of using our network to, like, build his own brand. I don't like it. Then I started Twitch because I was very bad off the cuff. I wanted a place where I could go to every day, build a community around it. I wanted something that was mine. And I wanted to be able to start speaking off the cuff. What better way to learn how to speak off the cuff than speak off the cuff for 8 hours a fucking day to an audience even, you know, have a back and forth. And I also was a gamer already. And I saw the gaming space as one
A gamer.
that was like actually very diverse and had a lot of like progressive opinions. But unfortunately, if you looked at like the gaming adjacent content creators, none of them were really openly leftist or anything like that. They were all actually very right wing. You had a lot of like actually far right content creators even that were doing like commentary and essays. So, you know, Gamergate had happened and everyone was talking about like, you know, how video games are political and that meant like there was like a black woman in the video game. You know what I mean? Not Call of Duty though. Call of Duty was not considered political. So it was a lot of commentary like that, which is why I was like, no, there's definitely demand for this. My kind of politics with my understanding of memes, internet culture, all that sort of stuff. And Twitch was the best place to go to do that because it was a video game platform. So that's when I made the move to start doing my Twitch, which was very tiny at the time, wasn't anything. And I started building it up slowly but surely. And by the time 2019 came around, it was at least like respectable. You know what I mean? I was reaching like sometimes 5,000 concurrent viewership.
Oh, wow.
That's
more than
amount.
respectable.
Yeah.
That's really good.
I mean, well, in comparison to where I'm at now, it was at the time, it was like not that big, right?
How are people finding you at that point? Was it just Twitch was pushing you to the top because people
No. A big part of it was networking. There were content creators that I collaborated with that I basically would do content with. It was a mutually beneficial situation. Trainwrecks TV was one of them that does like debates or would host like this podcast that was live. I would go on that all the time. There was another show by a friend of mine who I now do a podcast with called, well, at the time it had a different name, but his name is Austin Show.
Different name. Raj.
He had like these massive debates for that you know, basically everyone on the platform would be watching. At the time, it was like 35K live concurrent viewership, which was like you're maxing out at that point, right? For any kind of like non-Fortnite, you know, non-gaming content. And that's pretty much how I grew my platform. There was another content creator who I'm no longer friends with, but Destiny, who I collaborated with a lot as well early on.
So how often were you working at the YouTube channel and doing Twitch? How did you balance the two?
It was probably 2019 was probably the worst. There was no balance. No time for friends, no time for relationships, no time for family. I would wake up at around 5:30 in the morning, start reading and writing my script. I would go into the studio, shoot the video, have all the assets prepared, would drive back home after 2 p.m. It was like usually, you know, it was 6:37 to 2 p.m. is what my working time frame was for the Young Turks. But then I was still on call. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was done, right? I would have to upload the video myself to Facebook. That was my job as well. I would have to do the SEO for it, thumbnails, all that sort of stuff. Make the thumbnails, make the SEO. And I would drive back home, take my dog to the dog park, make my first meal of the day, basically, cook it as quickly as I could, go work out at the gym. And while I'm doing all of that, by the time, it was like 5 p.m. at this point, basically, the video would be ready to publish the video, go live on Twitch. And then from like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. to like 11 p.m., I was live streaming on Twitch as many hours as I could.
So what was the motivation for doing that? Was it to build Twitch up enough that you could leave?
The motivation was so that, the motivation was that I wanted a place that I could like go back to, like a community. You know what I mean? Another motivation for me was just like, have some independence outside of the Young Turks, like a brand of my own, something that people can point to and say, that's Hasan Piker. Yeah. Not at the Young Turks, like individually.
That's fair.
So that was my most, those were the primary motivators, and also be able to learn how to speak off the cuff.
How much were you making at the time between working like what seems to be 16-hour days, like every single day?
Before I left TYT, I think my salary was around like 65 grand.
Sure.
Which, for LA standards is not great. And on top of that, it was like whatever I was making on Twitch. I think I said I would go independent. Like I started thinking or teasing out like possibly going independent. Was it 5,000 subs or 10,000 subs? I can't remember. Which, after the Twitch pay cut is a lot of money. It's like another additional on top of that, like around, what is it? Like 20 grand, 25 grand, something like that. So, that was, I thought, enough for me to withstand the possibility of like losing healthcare and everything else, which was something that I had to, struggle with. It was something that I was genuinely fearful of. Yeah. Something that a lot of people have to think about if they have to make that jump on their own. So that's how that worked out for me.
So when did you make the jump full-time to Twitch?
August 21st, 2019 comes around.
Yeah.
And I say something that in a heated gaming moment that I still stand by in principle, and also like, as long as I elaborate what the intention behind what I said was. I said America deserved 9/11.
Oh, I've seen that clip.
Everyone's seen that clip at this point. I mean, that shit went on Fox News. I remember being fucking terrified.
That was really good old days.
Immediately, Keemstar elevated.
No, not you guys using my pause emote as the Twin Towers. No, no. No, stop. That's not what their purpose is. Stop.
Then, people clipped it out. Keemstar escalated it. It just elevated it, put it out there, broad daylight. And in that, in a span of 24 hours, it was on Fox News. It made it to Tucker Carlson. It made it to Laura Ingraham. Laura Ingraham was calling Dan Crenshaw in to respond to it, because I also said some stuff about Dan Crenshaw as well. And I remember thinking I'm killed. I'm gonna be murdered. Well, I'd been getting death threats at that point pretty regular.
The Dan Crenshaw stuff was crazy. I can't believe he said that. I'm still in disbelief that he said that. That was insane.
Really, but it was on Fox News now.
How many people were watching you when you said that live?
I don't remember, but it wasn't that big. It just
doesn't matter. Once it's out there,
yeah.
It's
yeah, it doesn't matter. Once you, that's how this works. It doesn't matter. You got 2,000 people, let's say, watching, or 5,000 people, let's say, watching. And then it gets in front of a much larger audience of people that are like, oh, fuck this guy. He's Muslim socialist guy. He's saying America deserved 9/11. He loves Al-Qaeda. You know what I mean? Which wasn't my point at all. It was actually the opposite. But that made its way to Fox News. And I remember thinking, oh shit, if Fox and Friends covers this in the morning, I know Donald Trump watches Fox and Friends. if Fox and Friends covers this in the morning, I'm fucking screwed because Donald Trump might tweet about it. And if he does that, I'm dead. Like, they're going to murder me. Like, there's no way I survive that. Right? And it was probably one of the worst weeks, months of my life. It's something that, you know, people still bring all the time, but I don't really give a shit. But at the time, I was still like a TYT guy. And so people were sending death threats to like everyone at the Young Turks, like literally everyone, down to like the key grip. You know what I mean? Like they found anyone and everyone that works at the Young Turks and would like dox them and say that they're going to fucking come murder them. That's when I realized, like, you know, maybe I should do this on my own. Like, I don't want other people to be suffering the consequences of my fucking stupid mouth and not being able to like fully elaborate on things or not get clip chimped, really.
What were you trying to get across when you said that comment?
You know, the 20th year, the 20th anniversary of 9/11 really was an interesting moment for me because everything that I've said on that broadcast, basically things that I already knew, was reinforced through every documentary that came out in that time frame. Talking about our arming and radicalizing of the Mujahideen in the lead up to the civil war in
You
Afghanistan.
literally can't say Mujahideen without me thinking of the quote. It's so bad.
And the USSR invasion of Afghanistan, and how much the CIA very openly elevated these otherwise like random groups of militants into a viable and robust anti-Soviet violent force. They did it through Islamic fundamentalism that they instilled upon people and legitimized. And then some of those groups became the Taliban, right? They started infighting. Some of those groups became the Taliban, and America was directly involved in this and very openly, even before Ronald Reagan famously brought them to the White House and said the Mujahideen reminded him of the founding fathers. So that's what I was talking about, because it was in response to what Dan Crenshaw was saying about how, 9/11 happened because they hate us. Like, they hate us because they hate us. That's it. And it was very frustrating for me to see like a dude who served overseas, got his eye blown out, right? To come back and just like keep reinforcing that same cycle of violence. And even using his like veteran status as a way to just like send more men and women overseas to get their shit blown off for no fucking reason. You know what I mean?
So you're saying they have a reason to
Stop.
dislike us, but not deserving to happen to innocent people?
Yes, I never meant that. Obviously, like the 3,000 people that died on 9/11 deserve to die. That's fucking ridiculous. I was simply talking about America's chickens coming home to roost. You know what I mean? At least in academic circles, or even in most circumstances, this is something that like every American kind of understands and recognizes. You know what I mean? Like, we constantly fuck their shit up over there. Eventually, some of those guys are gonna come back and like, do a little bit of whiplash, like come back and strike back, right? That was the point. Many such examples. It's a concept called blowback. And I think the way that the media actually started covering in the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and the Afghan invasion reflected all of the talking points that I was making at the time. Which is why I had a lot of people actually come back and be like, listen, I misunderstood what you were saying at the time, but I totally get it now.
Did that not make you really concerned about what you say when you go live and how things could be taken out of context? Did you change the way that you would speak after that to be more careful or considerate of like, you have to be very literal in what you say because things will be taken out of context?
Absolutely. Okay. I call it Twitter speak. Ew. There's a way that people speak if they're on Twitter all the time, where they want to make sure that nothing that they say can be, intentionally misconstrued. And if you ever use like any kind of spicy language, or if you embellish at all, if you exaggerate, like people will weaponize that against you. They'll use it against you. It's certainly something that I have cared about a lot more. Yeah. Like I take into consideration a lot more now.
I'm also curious, did any of that online hate translate in person?
I mean, I don't usually talk about that because I don't want to give any power to it.
Fair
but
enough.
it's just it is what it is.
Okay.
It happens.
Got it.
But no, for the most part, out in public when I meet people, no, it's a overwhelmingly positive experience. It's always just like people that work at the restaurants I go to, or people that are union activists and leaders that are saying, look, I love your show.
Yeah.
You gave me the confidence to go out and fight for my rights in the workplace, things of that nature. It's overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
And what was the outcome of like your next live stream after that comment?
Well, I got banned
You got banned.
for a week. Yes, because obviously
Right,
when something that you say on a live stream becomes a matter of national news, especially in a negative way, you're probably going to get banned. Twitch immediately took action, got banned for a week. And then I came back. And when you get banned and you come back, there's always like a big boost. A lot of people pay attention to that.
So this is something I actually wanted to get your opinion on. Universal basic income. What are your thoughts on it?
What a drastic shift.
Because that would give a lot of people that autonomy to be able to be their own boss to a certain extent and pursue other creative ventures.
UBI is actually a very good idea, but it can be a very bad idea as well. What do I mean by that? UBI is the problem with UBI is that if it's used as a way to further cripple the social safety nets, the existing social safety nets that are already in a state of disarray, then it's not good. Just a cash injection with that basically eats away at like EBT, SNAP credits, and Social Security and whatnot would be devastating, because I feel like that would open up the avenue to further privatize these institutions that the government is supposed to be controlling. So that is something that I'm very fearful of. But as a concept, if UBI on top of that was supplementary, great. I'm
Let
on
me
board.
ask you this. Do you feel like a person would be able to better manage money like that than the government would? Like, let's just say, hypothetically, you do get rid of all the other social services, but in its place, you go right to the person. You say you get $2,200 a month or $2,000 a month.
No,
you don't
it'd be
feel like a
horrible.
person would manage better.
Absolutely not.
Why is
Some
that?
people might, but no. I'm of the mindset that people are not very smart, and as a whole. And when we think about every single person, I'm a dumbass. Okay, I don't want to manage all of that stuff. Someone should manage all of that stuff, and I think that leaving it up to a governing body is always going to be, especially, I mean, even though it's like devastatingly crippled, it's awful for the most part, and it's not significant enough. I still think that having it be regulated through a body that is still somewhat accountable through the democratic processes is the right thing to do in theory. In practice, obviously, our institutions are purposely crippled, undermined, underfunded, and left to starve and die out so that you can privatize it, basically. But I'm a firm believer that having that safety net is really, really important. There are plenty of examples of this being super successful. I mean, every Nordic country that you look to, social democracies that you look to in Europe, there are, very different ways of doing things, but ultimately the principle behind it is still the same. Socialization is a necessity, I would say. And
what things do you think should be socialized? I think healthcare is one of the items that you mentioned. And
you're not going to like what I'm about to say.
And I know what you're about to say.
Yeah.
But we could talk. I'm more than happy to talk about it. Yeah.
So, I think, things that have inelastic demand, necessities for survival, should certainly have at least like a comfortable bottom that the government should provide. What do I mean by this? I'm not saying that we should like completely eradicate the private sector in all aspects of our development or all aspects of commodity commodity production. Well, maybe in the future that could be something that we could do, not in the short term, of course. But healthcare certainly should be nationalized. But you can't nationalize healthcare without also having free college, because you don't want doctors to get into $500,000 in debt, and then go work at a public facility for pennies on the dollar and not be able to even pay that debt back. Plenty of countries have recognized this, and that's the reason why they also offer free education. Even America has kind of been forced to recognize this reality. And you see schools like NYU and New York schools, like New York colleges, trying to create a scholarship process so that, doctors can get educated for free, or at least like have heavily subsidized education.
The thing is, you just have to incentivize people to want to do something, right? That's the government's job. The government's job is to incentivize its citizens to want to do certain things and disincentivize its citizens to do other things. That's why vice taxes exist. That's why cigarettes are really expensive in blue cities. It's because people don't want to have to deal with getting secondhand smoke everywhere they go. And also, more smokers is a health crisis. Like, you are going to spend more money on healthcare if you have more people that are smoking. So you're trying to disincentivize a behavior you don't want, smoking, so you make it more expensive to do. Right? The opposite can also be true. If you want people to go to higher education more, you subsidize that.
I also think, what I want to say, housing should be decommodified. What do I mean by that?
Housing needs to be decommodified yesterday. I thought we would learn from 2008, but apparently not.
I'll agree that housing housing is a necessity for survival. Mm-hmm. For that reason, I believe that housing as a mechanism for capital accumulation has really perverted our understanding of housing and has created glaringly obvious problems in America, but especially in a place like California, where 43.7% or 43.7 people for every 100,000 people is homeless here. It's like an insane number. I don't want to mess the numbers up.
Yeah.
Now, but we are number one.
Yeah. My understanding with homeless, though, is that a lot of people...
We are number one. We are number one.
...will come to California specifically because of the weather and because of some of the social services that are offered here. Part of me believes homelessness is not necessarily a California problem, but it's a countrywide problem. Someone could be homeless in, let's say, Nevada, and they get a one-way ticket to California. And that's Nevada's solution, by the way, to homelessness.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that was California's solution to homelessness, was to ship them to Hawaii back in the day. Another state with a lot of homelessness.
I feel like it's California's bearing a lot of the burden of a nationwide crisis of homelessness. That it's not just because California real estate's expensive, but it's also because the weather and I think the location really support people who have no other place to live but on the street because of the weather.
There is some truth to the way that Texas or red states deal with homelessness as a problem. What you're mentioning, there's truth to that. But ultimately, there are countries that have been able to eviscerate homelessness without shipping them to other places. You know what I mean? Countries.
Imagine the disconnect you have to think that we should ship our homelessness problems somewhere else. Literally, this is Patrick level logic. What if we take the homeless people and move them somewhere else?
Do a much better job of tackling the issue through policy than we do here in California. And it's not like they're killing their homeless people, they're housing them.
Yeah.
And the reality is that public housing or even decoupling housing from the profit motive is 100% a necessity to solve homelessness, because other than the people that are being shipped to California, let's say, the reason why we have so many homeless people here is because, and I work with a lot of people that do activism in this field, that work with homeless people in general. It's the number one factor is that they get priced out of the housing market. So I call this the different tiers of homelessness, because the most public facing side of homelessness is oftentimes the person that you see on the street that has like leathery skin at this point from being under the sun, from sun damage, sun exposure for many years.
Leathery skin. Oh God.
Who clearly is not mentally well, right? That is the last tier of homelessness. That is the type of homelessness that, like, this person is going to be profoundly hard to recover and profoundly hard to reintegrate into society. And
other countries don't have this problem, because when you become homeless, let's say you lose your job, you lose your apartment, or you lose your house or whatever, you spend essentially no time at all on the streets. You are immediately given a support system. You're immediately given like somewhere to stay. Like not the American shelters that we have where people regularly get assaulted, have their things taken away from them. They are not safe, clean environments. Like an actual homeless shelter that actually operates as a good shelter. You have a clean room, a clean bed, a door. And then they can help you before anything traumatic has happened, before potentially you've gotten into substance abuse, before you've developed like life-altering mental like instability or mental illness or whatever, or trauma. And that person is much easier to reintegrate into society than someone who has spent, some people in America who've spent like 5 years homeless. So not only are they like, obviously, the thing that is most important is that they are a human being that deserves a better life than that. Right? No human being deserves that bullshit when we live in the world's richest country. But because the only way to reach people is to be capitalist brain, that is someone who is not, someone who gets immediate treatment is not someone who is a strain on the medical system, right? Being 5 years, being 5 years homeless, you've probably developed a variety of physical illnesses, a variety of mental illnesses. You haven't probably had good, haven't had a warm shower in a long time, haven't had good dental care. So who knows what's happening? My teeth, as bad as like they have been, at the very least, I could always go to the dentist if there was some really bad pain. It took me 8 years to finally get my dental records in order and get, not records, but dental health in order. But it was never so bad that like I was fucked, right? There was always, okay, we can still work with this. We just need to spend a couple hours doing this and this and this. When you nip the problem in the bud before all of the terrible things can happen, we're done. It's good. We're good. But instead of that, we're just going to let homeless people be homeless because it's not fair. It's not fair to give them homes. They didn't earn them. What a pathetic worldview to have. To encourage the suffering of other people because you don't think that they worked hard enough to not suffer. God, I feel bad for anyone who thinks that. What's the difference between a well-structured homeless shelter in other countries and ours? Our homeless shelters are very notoriously dangerous. They're not safe or clean environments. There is no sectioning off between different, it's more of a barracks. A lot of shelters in the US are barracks more than they are like shelters. It's not great. It's not great. There's like, safetiness is another big one where like you don't have a way to store or keep your stuff safe. A lot of people have like reported like, oh yeah, my shit just got taken from me. Whereas other countries have like separated living rooms. Or living spaces, rather. Right? Like you have a bed, a shower, a sink, a door. Often no pets are allowed either. Oh, yeah, that's another big one. I forgot about that completely. If you have like an animal, even a service animal, or like a mental health like animal, good luck, because you can't bring them inside. So like, I think if you're homeless, you should be given and I'm not saying like, I think people think like, oh yeah, well, you think that's just going to grow on trees? We don't have the money to do this. Fucking Texas has done it. Texas has had cities where they rebrand, they refurnish like basically motels. and they give the space out to homeless people. They're not like amazing spaces, and we don't even need to give out amazing spaces. We're talking about like repurposing old motels that they have a door that locks, and they've got like a bathroom, they've got like bedrooms, and that's good enough because that is better than nothing. Let me see if I can find, I'm not going to bother trying to find the actual like thing, but like we're talking about a space that's like this. Hold up. Open image, a new tab. I believe the Texas story, like the spaces were like this. Like it's the basic amenities required. Bare minimum. Like the bare minimum. Renovations to turn former Austin hotel into housing for homeless could begin this month. Yeah, this I think this was the story. And it would cost less to do this. Because there's always the dipshits that are like, well, why would I want to do that? Why do I care about the suffering of other human beings? You expect me to care that other people are suffering? First of all, that's crazy, the tattletale. That's crazy that you would tell on yourself that way. But second of all, it's literally cheaper to do this. It is cheaper to solve problems before they become worse than it is to wait until a homeless person has been homeless for years. They've developed multiple physical illnesses, mental illnesses, trauma. They have developed like a general apathy and lack of desire because they have been shunned and discarded by a country that has more money than literally any other country, you know? It's just easier to assimilate someone back into society when they haven't been gone from it that long.